Hey, today I have with me Jane Daly. She's a columnist, speaker, author, does a little bit of everything. And I am so excited, Jane, to talk to you today because you've got so much going on that people are going to be interested in hearing about. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Thank you, Jennifer. It's great to be here. As you kind of mentioned, my lifestyle has changed in the last year. My husband and I decided that it was last January that it was time to do what we'd been talking about doing for the last 5 to 7 years, sell everything, buy an RV, and travel the United States
Wow.
and see people and places. And so that is our life right now. It's pretty crazy.
I can imagine. I don't even want to ask you how much it costs to fill up your RV.
Oh
But
my goodness. Yeah, you don't want to know.
I guess the farther you get away from California, the less expensive it becomes.
Exactly. Yes. Last summer about killed us because of the way that the gas prices went up. It was because I think we've got an 80-gallon tank. So you can multiply 80
Oh
gallons times
my
$4
God,
and you can
yeah.
kind of figure out how much it was to fill that tank up.
And you have what? What do you get? 10 miles to the gallon if you're lucky?
Not even. We get about 8 because we tow a car.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that would just make me crazy. Okay,
Yeah.
so how has that been? I mean, RV life. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, there's an adjustment, of course, because I was working up until I retired. My husband was working part-time. So, your typical thing, you go to work, you come home, my husband would fix dinner, you've got the weekends to, cram in all of your stuff to do. Now we're together 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And sometimes it gets a little tense because
There's an
because there's
adjustment.
two people who are living in 400 square feet.
Right.
So, but I would say that it's drawn us a lot closer. And the things that we've experienced together in this past year, I would not give up at all. As I like to say, it is not about the places that we've been, it's about the people. We have
Yeah.
met some amazing people. Yes, we've seen some amazing things, but we have met some people and we've been able to reconnect with friends that we haven't seen for years, either people who we've known from when we were missionaries and we were missionaries in rural Montana, but we also have friends from California who've moved to the South and we've gotten to connect with them and in Texas. And so it's been a real blessing. It's been cool. It's
Yeah.
very cool.
Nice. Is it do you find that you get inspiration for your writing from some of these characters that you meet?
Definitely. Well, as an author, you listen to people's stories and you file those little anecdotes away thinking, I'm going to use that in a story. I'm going to use that personality quirk in a story. I mean, that's how we make our characters rich and more than just a cardboard.
Right, right, right. So tell us a little bit about your writing. You just had a book come out. Just so the audience out there knows, it's very confusing. And I've said this before. We are doing this interview. It is March 2nd. Is it March 2nd? March 3rd? March 2nd. So it's March 2nd, and this will not actually publish until May 4th. So this is 2 months previous. So keep that in mind as we're talking, that it might throw you guys off out there, but we're 2 months previous. So tell us about some of your books, because you just had one come out recently, correct?
I my I'm not sure when my next one will be out, if it'll be out by the time this podcast airs, but I had one released July 1st of 2022, and that's
Okay.
called Broken, A Story of Redemption. My kind of overarching theme is where redemption meets life. So this is a story about a young woman who experiences redemption in a very, very powerful way. The sequel to that will be coming out soon, and hopefully it will be out by the time this
Or
podcast
at least
airs.
available for pre-order, maybe.
It will probably be available for pre-order. I'm just not sure when. And that's called Broken Silence. And it is the sequel to Broken.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit about Broken?
Yes. So for your listeners, I'm not sure if many are aware, well, maybe everyone's aware that there's a lot of young women who are cutters. They're into self-mutilation. And so this is a young woman who has experienced such abuse and hardship in her life that she resorts to self-mutilation. And when she experiences unconditional love for the first time, she is able to break that addiction off of her. But there's a lot of, I don't want to give away too much, but it's my favorite story of all, my favorite characters of all. And I would wish I could keep writing about them forever because
Oh.
I love them.
So when you research for that, did you talk to girls that have been cutters, or is your research mainly using the internet, or how do you do research for something like that?
There's an author that I know, you may know her. Her name is Jan Kern.
Oh yeah.
And she wrote a book, Scars That Wound, Scars That Heal, or something like that. So I read her book, had conversations with her to get some insight into that whole world of what causes somebody to do that. And I did research, Google is fabulous.
I know. It makes it a lot easier, doesn't it? It's amazing.
Yes.
I was just looking at MTSU, the Middle Tennessee State University, and I wanted to get a real feel for being on campus. I just don't want to drive all the way to Murfreesboro, but you can pull up pictures, you can look at things, you can get a sense of it.
Yeah, you
It
can
makes
do
it a lot
probably a
easier.
360
Uh-huh.
search.
Inside
Yeah.
and out. It's pretty incredible. It does help
Yeah.
a lot. So about your other books. So
Okay.
we're talking about them. You have Broken: A Story of Redemption, and then you have A Girl in the Cardboard Box. When did that come out?
That came out a year prior. So that came out in 2021.
Okay.
That is a story about a little girl who was found wandering in a homeless camp. And it's about how the main character, Haley, takes her in. And it's kind of one of those things of
Sorry.
who heals who.
I apologize. That was bad. I forgot to turn my phone off.
Oh dear.
And that was my son's, like Mr. Grinch is my son's call, his ringtone. So there you go. I am so sorry. That is the first time that's happened. Okay. The Girl in the Cardboard Box. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
that's all right. So Haley is the main character who takes this little girl in as a foster mother, and so she's trying to earn God's favor, re-earn God's favor, because she thinks that God has punished her. Her little girl was killed by a drunk driver, and she thinks that it was God's retribution because she had an abortion when she was in college.
Oh,
So she
no.
thinks that if she can just take in foster children and show I can be a good mother, that God will then be able to forgive her. So she learns, of course, that God doesn't work that way.
Wow. That's powerful. Do you, how would you categorize the genre of books that you write? So is this women's
They're
fiction or?
contemporary women's fiction. Yeah, they're
Okay.
women. When people ask me, I generally say it's women's fiction with a Christian worldview. It's
Okay.
not that they're not preachy. I mean,
Right.
they're
No, I
not.
understand.
Yeah.
But usually you see women's, so it just, there's such a broad range of women's fiction. Like my women's fiction books were always had, or most of them had children involved and that kind of stuff, just like yours do, but was family oriented. So I can see where that fits into that genre very well. And
Yeah, I just downloaded 2 of your books, so I'm anxious to get started on them
which
because
two?
hold on and I will tell you.
I'm always curious.
I pre-ordered Night Songs, and
That's been out. Night Songs has been out since.
okay, well, maybe that's.
You don't have to pre-order. You can pre-order Shadow Dancing.
I don't remember. Okay, they're kind of at the bottom of my list.
It's
I
okay.
don't know.
I was just
But
curious.
I did order Night Songs. So
Yeah,
I'm
that's
anxious.
one of my favorite is Night Songs. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fun. What's new, Southern fiction. It's a new.
Right.
new
Yeah,
thing.
I haven't started writing anything that takes place in Tennessee yet. The book that I'm working on now that my agent is getting ready to resubmit to a different publisher is a series that takes place on the Oregon coast.
Oh, nice.
I'm
Yeah.
still, my part of me is still back there. We have
I
a
know.
we have a church back there that we regularly return to.
Well, I'll tell you, when you start hanging around, like we've been here, it'll be 5 years this summer that we've been here, and you start taking in the culture, you can't help but want to write about it. You just can't.
That's so true. That's so
You
true.
want to immerse yourself in it. So,
So the other two books, the first book that I wrote is nonfiction. It's called Because of Grace. And it's the story of how I survived my son's death
mm,
because of the grace of God. My son passed away at the age of 30 from cancer, incurable cancer.
oh my gosh, what
And
kind of cancer did he have?
he had sarcoma, and it was very rare. It was sarcoma that was in his chest. Typically, sarcoma is in a long bone of your body, and it could
Yeah.
be amputated or cured. But because his was in his chest, it just he didn't really have a chance. He lived a year after his diagnosis.
Was he
So
married? Kids
he
or
was
anything?
married. Yeah, no kids, but he was married.
Oh, I'm so
So,
sorry about that.
so I used some stories of other women that I met who'd also lost a child. So whether your child is an adult or, if you miscarry, I feel like the book will help those women who are grieving over the loss.
I think that's critical. And I think as women, I believe most often we tend to bury the pain and move on. And if you don't go through the process, you can't heal, and it's going to come back and bite you later, one way or the other.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's hard. Well, I'm sorry about that. I looked at your blogs. I love that your blog, I always struggle with the blogs. It's like I'll do a book review, I'll do a movie review, but I'll do a spiritual thing. But it's just like your blog posts seem so um natural. They seem engaging. They seem different, So what do you have, like, experiences or inspiration for your blogs? And do you have and I notice they're not every week, but they're not every other week either. So how often do you have a
Well,
scheduled blog post?
okay. So, something happened on my website and the blog kind of like didn't it didn't post. And so I've been posting. I decided to totally change direction because they were so random and like, I don't know. I have a newsletter that I do every month and it's called Rigsby on the Road. And it's all about our life here on the road, what
Oh,
we're
fun.
experiencing. So the blog was kind of doing that. Then I decided, I'm going to do the newsletter. So I've changed my blog and my web person is helping me get it back up to getting posted because it's like I write a blog and it goes nowhere. So the blog now is more geared toward encouraging people to read and doing book reviews.
Okay.
And the Rigsby on the Road is a little bit more about the things that we're experiencing, not all, hey, it's all happy, we're
Right.
traveling the world in our RV, it's so wonderful. I'm sharing some stuff that's been hard and difficult
Yeah.
and painful in the newsletter.
Well, I think readers really want to know I think my life is so uninteresting. I can't imagine why anybody would want to know about it. So I struggle with that because it's like, oh, well, you know, I'm playing pickleball. That's fun. And I'm going to my
How
granddaughter's.
about how pickleball imitates life?
Well, I'll tell you, it's not, this is not funny. I'm not saying this is funny, but side story. We have a group of women. It started with a group of women from our church, and then it's kind of grown. And I only go on Friday because I write Monday through Thursday. I work. And so my husband had just said, oh, I'll go play pickleball with you. It sounds like fun. And so I guess the other day, one of the other husbands went for the first time with his wife to play pickleball. He fell and broke his hip. Yeah. So I'm just like, you sure you want to go play pickleball? Because he goes, you guys are rough. I said, I don't think so, but was a freak thing, and he wasn't a big man. He was a small bone man and fell, and there he went. So yeah. So
Yes.
I know it's kind of like that's what happens when you start getting older. You start hearing more of these stories, but
It's
um,
true. It's
yeah,
true.
but yeah, that's a good idea. How pickleball
how you
imitates
can,
real life. I don't
yeah,
know.
I mean, when you're playing pickleball thinking you're going to have a good time and you fall and break your hip, that's kind of what happens in life.
That
You
is
know?
what, you know, my tagline is where crisis and Christ collide. And
Yes, I love your tagline. I
that's
was like,
like,
this is so cool.
it's, well, the same idea you were saying, you know,
Yes, where
where
redemption meets life.
exactly.
Exactly.
It's the same idea. So tell me what a typical, what your typical work week looks like. Do you write every day? Do you write part of the day? Do you have a schedule?
Ooh, so this is what I have found in the last year that I think is kind of interesting. So when I was working, I had this, because your time is really limited. I mean, you work 8 to 5 or whatever. And I felt like there was always a frenzy to write. So I'm either
Mhm.
getting up early and writing, or staying up late and writing, or you're really blocking out time. And Saturdays were like 5 hours I'm writing, and Sunday. Now that I'm retired, I don't feel like I have that frenzy. And so I'm feeling a lot more relaxed about my writing, which is kind of a relief. So I don't have a typical, I just finished a novel that is now under contract, but I'm having to go back and edit it. And so, and I have the next one kind of, that I'm outlining in my head. I don't have a typical work week because we work part-time here at the campground where we're staying,
Mhm.
to help defray costs.
Right.
So I do have to work between 15 and 20 hours a week. So I just kind of, and the schedule changes. So will either work 8 to 12 or maybe 11 to 3 or however. So my writing, it's just, I don't have a typical. I don't have a typical. I'm not real good at blocking out like I'm every Monday and every Tuesday at
Right.
this time.
Right. Right.
I just kind of go, okay, I've got a couple hours. I'm going to sit down and write today and get this done. But right now, because I'm in the editing mode, I haven't started new words yet.
So how many books do you do a book a year? Do you do more than a book a year?
So my goal is to traditionally publish at least a book a year. So the company that I'm with, Elk Lake, they will only do one book a year for an author because they have so many authors. And last year they published, I think, 115 books.
Wow.
So, so the one that I just got contracted for won't come out until 2024. But at the same time, I'm writing this other series that my agent is submitting to a totally different publisher. And it's the Oregon Coast one, and they're a little bit more of romance than
Mhm.
they are hard subject. Because the
Right.
subject of the next one is called Where Is My Sister? And it's about a young woman who gets pulled into kind of a cultish type situation that's really a front for a sex trafficking operation. And so how does a young woman who's raised in a Christian home fall for this false teaching? And so
Well, that,
anyway,
yeah, you hear adults falling for false teaching. So,
well, yeah. So
so
that's
fun. I
part.
mean, you're writing hard stuff. And
Yeah.
I know that when I was writing hard stuff, and I'm shifting to more Southern fiction, and I'm going to shift into romantic suspense, because there comes a time where I can't do the hard stuff anymore. Like I need a break. I need my brain to have a break. Do you
Mhm.
feel that with what you're doing with your Oregon Coast book? Is that giving you a little bit of a
Yeah.
break?
Yeah, because they're a little bit more fun. I mean, the characters are still, I think, interesting and not your typical um
Oh, like
boy
a
meets
Hallmark.
girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hallmark, where it's very predictable. They're a little bit more in depth than that, and the characters have a little bit more going on than just your typical Hallmark thing where you're like, okay, here comes the big breakup,
Right.
and then they get back together.
You could actually formulate. I spoke to somebody actually at a Mount Herman conference, and I'm not going to remember his name. You might know him, but he was writing for quite a while for Hallmark. And he came as a speaker and a teacher at Mount Herman quite a few years back. And so one of my good friends and author, writer friend said, you need to go talk to him because your books could, even the women's fiction, could be turned into Hallmark. And he's like, now, you know what? They don't want any conflict anymore. It's so formulaic. You're not allowed to have any conflict. He goes, I'm not writing for them anymore. I can't do it. He said, because there's no depth It's, you have the same gal and the same guy, and you switch up a little bit of who they work for, and it's formulaic.
Right. And throw in a couple of prayers and it's a Christian fiction. It's a, Hallmark, romantic, whatever. Yeah, I agree. I have submitted several stories to, what's the Hallmark, not the Hallmark, the Harlequin.
Love inspired.
Yeah, Love Inspired, and they've all been rejected because they didn't fit in that little box.
Yeah, and
And that's okay.
I've read a couple Love Inspired, and they're fine, and they're, but again, it's, and the ones I read were not formulaic necessarily. Like, there was some suspense to it and everything, but I have a really hard, my husband and I we get up every morning at 4:30, or like this morning it was 2:00. It just depends on when we wake up, do an hour Bible study, and then go work out together. And we watch a show, we stream something while we're working out. And I'm the one who's, you're watching Castle, and it's like, really, she's got 5-inch heels and she's running after this guy. Why would anybody who's a cop be wearing 5-inch heels? And how come she's waking up in the morning with false eyelashes and makeup on? It just makes no sense. And it drives me. He's like, I don't even notice those things. Can you just quit pointing them out? So I can't help it. I can't, because when you're writing stories, it has to make sense. And so when you read a story and everything lines up too perfectly, and it's just like, it's in the real world that wouldn't happen. I have a hard time with that.
Exactly. Well, I was listening to a podcast yesterday. It's the Christian Publishing Show with Thomas Umstattd.
Mm-hmm.
And he was interviewing somebody who was talking about how there's so many Christian books that are
Unrealistic.
Thank you. Unrealistic, because the characters are so formulaic like that. She called them cardboard cutouts. They don't have any depth. They're either like all super good and we never make a mistake. Whereas I think, your characters, we know we're fallible. Even as Christians, we're going to be flawed. And it's how that flaw gets worked out through God that makes it an interesting story,
or strengthens their relationship with God. Or like, I have a friend who's remain nameless, who's very critical of, if my character is flawed, she's like, well, that's just, and she's very judgmental about how these characters are. How can they be that way? And they just don't understand. It's like, they have to start out flawed. Where do you go from there? How do you develop a character and have a story arc that makes sense if there's no way, if it's flat? There has to be somewhere to go from here to here, and it has to make sense, and it can't be wrapped up in some easy peasy, story. It's, I don't know. It's a process. It's a process. So
for sure. Yeah. Characters. And we can learn so much from just the people around us, because we see people, especially we work around all non-Christians. And so it's very easy to see, oh, I can take that particular foible of that character, but how can I make them change? How can I give them redemption from here to there, and make it real, not just, oh, they accepted the Lord and now everything's fine and their life is great. We know it doesn't work that way.
But even people that are saved, it's a struggle. We're sinners, we're still sinners. And I think motivation plays a huge part. I love the idea of deep motivation for whatever somebody's doing, because if you look at, you can have a person who does all these good things, and they, from the outside, they look like, wow, they're just so giving and loving. But when you discover that inside, it's all about, look at me, I'm so special. I'm the youngest child in a family. I need to be noticed. Look at me, look at me. You see, the motivation is not pure, and that you need to know the inside of a character in order to understand that, the depth of them, which is so important.
What causes them to do what they do?
Exactly. I have my degree. I did get a college. I taught middle school for years, and I had a degree in psychology, which I really felt helped me understand 8th graders, for one thing, but understanding characters. I mean, do you do any any kind of character development before you start? Do you look at anything to develop those characters as something unique in some way, or is it all in
Yeah,
your head?
what I do is I write down kind of a brief character sketch, what they look like, what they talk like, their things that they're addicted to, whether it's chocolate or music, or what kind of music do they listen to. So I do like a really in-depth character building sketch of, and then what's their greatest fear, and what motivates them to do what they do. And then what I find is, as I'm writing the story, the characters they sometimes morph just a little bit, but I try to kind of keep that pure, so that they stay consistent through the entire book.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I think I need to do more of that. I wing it a lot. I really depend on the Holy Spirit a lot. I'm amazed at how often he will come in and shift things around and make it all work. You
I
know?
love that. That's what happened in The Girl in the Cardboard Box, and I won't give any spoilers, but there was a certain character in there who I thought was going to do X, and they did Y as I'm writing, and I was like, why did you do that? You were not supposed to do that. But I think it made the story a lot stronger.
Yeah, I love when that happens. Those little unexpected divine interventions in the story that make
I know,
them.
it kind of gives me goosebumps. It's
It
like,
does.
ooh, that character just did its own thing, and that had to have been from God.
Well, I know if I read what I've written and it sounds good, I'm like, that wasn't me. Thank you, Lord. I'm just not that good. It's amazing. So we still have a little bit of time. Is there anything in particular you'd like to touch on or talk more about? Your RVing, how long have you been in this one place? And tell us, maybe give us a horror story that you would share on your blog. Not that we don't want to know the innermost things that you wouldn't want to share with public, but you said you share on your blog like some of the really hard things. What is the hardest thing about being on the road all the time?
For me, the hardest thing is dealing with fear, because this is our home. My fear is that we are going to get into an accident and lose our home, or lose our stuff, or lose our lives. So my husband is the driver. I've driven this thing once, and I will learn to drive it, but it's 37 feet, and we
Oh
tow
man.
a vehicle. So it's a long RV. So being on the road can be frightening. And we've had a couple of breakdowns, which are not fun, because then our RV has to go into the shop. Sometimes we can stay in it while it's being worked on, and sometimes we can't. And so we have to find alternative
Oh my God.
lodging. And we have 2 cats, so that makes it a little bit more of a challenge. So the biggest on our very first trip down California, we were going up over the Grapevine. And for those of you who are not from California, the Grapevine is a very windy uphill road that takes you up and over. I think it's the San Fernando
And
Mountains.
it's going to be very high elevation, right?
Very high elevation, and it drops you down into the Los Angeles Valley. So we were going up and over, and all of a sudden we lost power, and we could only go about like 25 miles per hour chugging up the Grapevine. And we got kind of near the top, of my husband's like, I've got to pull over. I don't know what's going on. So we pulled over and turned off the car, and then it was a Saturday. And so we were trying to find some place that could tow us. I mean, on Saturday, nobody's open. And so I was freaked out, and I went in the back in the bedroom, and I curled up in a fetal position and started to cry. And I just said, this is not the life I had pictured. I don't want to be here. I want to go home. And I mean, just having an absolute pity party. And so lying there, and I prayed. And meanwhile, my husband's on the phone. He's like trying to get someone to come take a look and figure out what's wrong. And so there was a light that came on the dashboard. And so after I had my little hissy fit and cried, and then I said, okay, Lord, I need some wisdom right now. So I went out, and I got the owner's manual and started reading. It says, oh, well, if you see this particular code or light or whatever on the dash. It means X. It means your vehicle is drivable. You just should go service it soon. So I was like, okay, Mike, we're going to take a step of faith here. We're going to drive this thing to where we're supposed to be camping, and then we'll work on it, because we obviously we can't stay up here at the top of the grapevine with nobody coming to get us. Because our tow service was like, we can't get a hold of anybody, nobody's open. So we drove for the next 4 hours, which should have not have taken us that long, into Yucaipa at 35 miles an hour on the freeway in Los Angeles, towing a vehicle. And it was not fun, because going up over overpasses was like, but God was amazing when we found a place on Monday morning that was able to find us, that was able to look at us, fix it. We met an angel there. I swear it was an angel, who just showed me that it was going to be okay. God was in control. So that was like, I don't ever want to have that happen again. But we have broken down before again, and it's been fine. And it's just, it's the fear. That's the fear. But the joy is so much better, because we stay in these amazing places, and we've gotten to see things that we've never been able to see on just like a 2-week summer vacation.
Right.
Because, you know, you're always rushed, and we're not rushed. We can hang out and visit with people, and we've made friends all across the United States.
That's very nice. Where's your favorite place so far that you've stayed?
Oh man.
Because how long have you been on the road now?
A year.
Wow.
We left February 7th of last year. Gosh, my favorite place. I could not even tell you. I mean, I will tell you that visiting the Mount Rushmore was amazing, and Glacier National Park, also fantastic. But the times I remember are the times that we spent with friends. We spent a week with our friends in Montana. We spent 2 or 3 weeks with our friends down in Sacramento. Stayed for a month with our friends in Oregon in their vineyard. And yeah, it's the people. It is the people, not the places.
Wow, it's pretty amazing. It is a dream come true. So do you
Absolutely.
I mean, what happens do you foresee getting tired of it, or coming to a place where you're going to have to put it up? Or
we have kind of given ourselves 5 years and said, okay, in 5 years, if we're still enjoying it and we still want to keep doing it, we still are physically able to do it, we will do it longer. But if we're in 5 years, say, nah, nope, I think then we'll probably rent an apartment in Tennessee near our daughter and just live the rest of our lives as retirees in Tennessee.
wow, it's quite well, if you ever get out here, we're going to have you.
Well, you know, if we winter in Tennessee this year, I don't know how far you are from Chattanooga, but
we're about 2.5 hours.
perfect.
It's not far.
Perfect.
It's not far.
Not a bad drive.
Yeah, it is a bad drive. It's not a bad distance. It's the highway. Oh my gosh, we were going down. I have a cousin that lives in Newport, which is out by Gatlinburg area. And she wanted me to drop some books off to her. And I said, okay, I can do that. Well, silly me, you know, in Tennessee, halfway through, a little more than halfway through, the time changes. So we're Pacific time, but Chattanooga is Eastern time.
Right.
I did not make that connection. She's Eastern time. So we were going to book down there after church because we had company. Actually, you may know John and Kathy Von Hoff. Yeah. Well, John lives here now. We found him a realtor. And so he's here living near my sister-in-law in Christiana. So they were here visiting. They were looking to move to Idaho, had put offers on places in Idaho, came here, and Kathy's like, I don't want to move to Idaho. I changed my mind. I want to move here. So it changed everything. So anyway, they were here for that weekend looking around. So we booked after church, and I got down there and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I said we'd be here at such and such time, but we are an hour off. So she'd have to wait for us. So anyway, we got there, but the highway is busy and fast. It's supposed to be slower, and people are booking down this thing. It's windy and busy and just horrible. Like 17 in San Jose, you know, 17?
Oh, yes.
It's worse than 17. So we have this FedEx truck who wants to get around everybody, and he's passing people on the shoulder of the road going 65, 70 miles an hour in a 55. He had to have been on something, and he's going so fast. He realizes he missed that off ramp to do the weigh-in thing, hits his brakes, and all these cars are stopping. Then he goes ahead and goes on. It was nightmare. It's like, I hate that. I'll go at 2:00 in the morning. It might be a little, but there are a lot of truckers that are in there, and it goes so fast. And we've driven in Spain. It was worse. It was worse than driving in Spain, let me tell you. So it was bad.
Yeah.
But when you get at the other end of it, Chattanooga is really nice.
Yes, it is. Well, maybe we can meet halfway.
Well, we'll come down there. 2.5 hours isn't that bad. I just need to be braver. I don't drive. I'll let my husband drive. I was actually the one driving that time. And he's snapping pictures of the FedEx truck so we can call FedEx and turn him in. But yeah, it was a crazy drive down there. But it is, if Sunday afternoon is probably the worst time, everybody's going down for something. So, well, that kind of wraps us up, Jane. So I am just tickled that you are close by and that you guys are doing so well on your RVing and stuff. And I will make sure I put in the show notes the links to your books. I'll put a link to your website, so it'll have your newsletter and your blog posts and your RVing stuff on there, and have people come and check you out.
That'd be great, Jennifer. I would love it. And anyone who answers if anyone makes a comment, answers my email or my newsletter, I always respond. So that's kind of fun to hear from people, as you know.
It is. I just separated my blogs from my newsletter, so people are not subscribed to my blog unless they go on now and subscribe.
And that's kind of what's happening with me. So,
yeah.
but you can subscribe to my newsletter.
Yeah. Yeah. So everybody do that. And I'm sure I'm sure you have a gift to give away for that, right? You've got a.
Yep. There's a free download. It's the prequel to the book Broken, A Story of Redemption.
There you go.
Story of how Jinxie got where she is. So what in the world caused her to end up in Sacramento on the street?
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I'm very familiar with Sacramento. We were in Amador County. So
right.
I went to Sac State actually for college. So very familiar with that area. Okay, Jane, it's been a blessing.
Well, thank you. It has been wonderful. I can't wait to read your books, and I am going to subscribe to your blog as soon as we get off this podcast.
Okay, well, I will, and I'm going to do the same for your newsletter at least, so I can get a load of that and get your free download and check out your book. So good to talk to you, Jane. I wish you and Mike the best. Be praying for you, and
thank you.
Stay in contact.
We will, and we'll connect when we're in Tennessee the next time.
Perfect. We'll
All right.
that. Okay.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.